We're here today because I just personally feel a burden that I need to communicate directly to all of our members. We're in the fall of 2025, and this has been a hard fall season. In the last 90 days, we've lost 4 active duty firefighters to suicide. I cannot believe the devastation that it's caused within their family, their immediate family, their fire family. And we're all left without answers. I'm the president of the CPF, and a lot of people know me, but you don't really know me. You don't know what I was in life, where I've been in life, and the struggles. And that's what I want to talk to you about. You know, I've had a great life. I've been blessed with this profession. My union has blessed me. My employers did, although we had to kick them around the block a little bit to get there. But all in all, being a firefighter has been a tremendous job. It has its own stresses. It has its own hardships with the things you do, see, smell, feel, touch. But the thing that we don't really talk about a lot is most of us come in here with our own baggage. We have our own stuff in our lives. And, you know, for me, it started at age 8. I lost my dad when I was 8. And that was 1969. And things were very different then. You know, there really wasn't counseling. There wasn't anywhere to go with your grief. And it's not bad on anyone's part. We just didn't know any better. And so my manifestation of all of that was, I didn't realize it, but I've been doing a lot of counseling. I turned into a very angry little boy, and that anger kind of morphed into really a protective shell. And so as I went through life, I got 2 job offers, one in the fire service and one for Viking Trucking, and who's now defunct. I could have just as easily been a truck driver as I am a firefighter. But one of the things that followed me through life, and I can't say it was because of this, it was because of that, but I started doing different kinds of dope at a pretty early age. The earliest I remember is 6th grade, walking to school, smoking cigarettes, doing bennies or whites, what we called them. That kind of progressed through high school to smoking weed a lot and other drugs. But one of the things that got me, I started drinking, and I started drinking a lot. And my mind was always in an inner turmoil. I was never at peace. I was never satisfied with who I was. I always had an internal struggle, but I was definitely very high functioning, but not high achieving, but I was a good bullshitter. I graduated high school with a 1.6 grade point average. I wanted to be a firefighter. And it goes back to about 1969, 70, 71, when my 2 uncles, one worked for then the city of Fontana, one worked for the city of Rialto. And they took my brothers and I under their wing, and I was hooked. I wanted to be a firefighter. But I drank that dream away. Through my high school years, I remember my high school guidance counselor laughed at me when I said I wanted to be a firefighter. Back then, you used the term fireman because that was still what was used, which really offended me and turned me off towards school more. And the one thing that I noticed was the inner anger was always there. I was able to soothe it with alcohol, my marijuana, cocaine, all that stuff kind of tapered off as I got into my teens and into my 20s. And I had an event in my early 20s where I was offered a job by my dad's brother, who you know, we weren't close to, but he offered a job. It was a very professional setting in the insurance industry in Phoenix, Arizona. But you're looking at a guy who was working in a lumber yard. I was humping lumber and being a day laborer. You know, I didn't even own a tie. So I was leaving all that behind, where you drank in the morning before work, you drank at you know, that was part of your day. And so I went into this more business setting. And one of the things, and I figured this out through counseling now, but one of the things when I look back, my struggles were with that loss, and I was haunted by it. And I would have thoughts that I don't want to be here. I'd be better off dead. The struggle of just trying to make ends meet day to day and live on your own, and I mean, failing my way through life. And as I moved to Phoenix, my drinking got worse, out of control worse. And I would still be in my own mind about, I could not get over the loss of a father at that age. I just couldn't. And at that time, I didn't know it. I didn't know what was driving me. When you have friends you party with that tell you you're drinking too much, I wrecked a car. I caused chaos in the family that brought me in. And in about 81 or so, things were peaking. And my behavior was out of control. Why my uncle didn't fire me or walk away from me, I have no idea. But I was getting evicted from where I was living, still carrying on as a professional, making incredibly stupid decisions, like driving to the Bay Area to help a friend buy Coke and then drive to Humboldt, end up in Humboldt. You do this on a Friday, you got to work on a Monday. I'm in Humboldt with no money and not enough gas to get home. Trading my way back to, I remember the last thing I traded was in Indio, California, a toolbox off of the truck to get enough gas to get home. I only say this because I want to kind of paint a picture of how chaotic my mind was and how sick I was, but I didn't know it. But I was functioning on a daily basis. It all came to a head when I could have got arrested for stealing a car. I borrowed my uncle's car without permission, and my dumb drunk buddies, I rolled it out in the desert in Phoenix, and about a 4-week spiral started where my drinking was out of control. I'd hide out in my then new apartment because I conned somebody into being my roommate. It got to the point that I was in this place by myself. He had a shotgun. He had no ammunition. I had it. I had it sitting on the floor. And the thoughts of suicide were so strong. My mind was so out of control. And I'm going to go back because Alex Hamilton said this in our last video. The impulse had taken over. I was right there. I thank God. I thank God that there was no ammunition in that house, because if there was, my life would have ended back in 1981. At this point, it was an impulsive quest to kill myself. I paced the apartment. When you're roommates, you don't go in your other roommates' rooms. I was all over that house pacing. I ended up in my bathroom, and I chewed the razor blades out of a safety razor. And I stood in front of a mirror. And I had been drinking for days, not hours, days. And I was very intoxicated and under the influence. I chewed the blades out of this razor and stood just trying to make this decision, and I did. And the second I did it, and it hit the radial artery, I cut very deep, blood went everywhere. I grabbed my wrist and I knew I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. And I was in a 4-story apartment. I made my way down to a common area where people saw me, and I just collapsed. Ended up on a 72-hour hold. The doctor, I remember it plain as day, my blood alcohol was well over 0.35. He said, the fact that you were even on your feet and conscious and haven't died of alcohol poisoning tells me one thing among the many that you have a problem with, is you are a raging alcoholic. Because most people wouldn't have survived your blood alcohol level. I needed surgery. They refused to do it because we don't know what your mental capacity is. They released me. I was on a 72-hour hold. They released me to my parents. And I was like 22, right in there. My uncle came to see me as I was on a hold, and he looked at me and told me, "You're like a bomb that's gone off in my life. You're never going to amount to anything. Your parents and God can't save you." And so my parents came down and they said, "Come stay with us, but you have to give 2 rules." What? And at that point, I would do anything. You have to go to AA and you have to go to church with us. And so I'm in, I'll do that. I did 90 meetings in 90 days. I went to church, but I was a hateful guy in the back with a cast. During that course of time, I'll never forget this guy, Dr. James Lilla. He was a hand surgeon in Sacramento. He saw me. I had nothing. I was a drunk. I was a sober and a dry drunk. And he evaluated me. He said, if you will do some rehab and stuff, I will treat you. I don't have anything. I don't care. If you promise me you won't do this again. And so I did. I had a guy at the church, Dave Anderson, came to me and said, you have a job when you're ready to go. So I started working. I was a laborer. I was working with all these construction guys. And my fire department dream came back because I saw a sign at then Arden Fire District Station Number 5, which is now Metro Fire Station 105. And so my healing process began. How did I get there? I'm not there yet. I'm still in that process of healing, but I can tell you several things happened. AA happened, and I got sober using those principles, those steps, and the principles of AA. And the other was God. I went to church, the hateful guy in the back, and slowly but surely my heart got released. I got saved, and people go, dude, this guy's a weirdo. How do we work for him? That desire to drink was lifted off of me. That was a gift from God. There's no doubt in my mind. But I wasn't whole and I wasn't healed yet. I still had this stuff going on up here. And I met my wife at church. I kept going. I built a life surrounded by that. I found my fire department dream. I started testing. I got my EMT. This is in the very early 80s. Things were falling this way, but I was still angry. But I was able to keep that inside. My wife would probably tell you a different story. I have not been an easy person to live with. I don't think I was an easy captain to work under. But I think I was good because I always had senior guys and always on busy companies that they didn't have to work on. But in my head, the turmoil, and I went many years, no counseling. My first experience with PTSI was on a twins SID death, where one of them died and one of them lived. And that was the first time that I experienced post-traumatic stress and couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate, was angry with my family. It was all those key indicators. I went to one counseling session and it helped me unlock that to at least understand that I wasn't a weirdo, I wasn't going crazy. But I will tell you, the further I got away from my sobriety of 90 meetings in 90 days, I was losing a grip on my sobriety that whole time. And I was a firefighter by then. I smoked like a chimney. I chewed tobacco and smoked. It's been probably 10 years ago now since I quit using tobacco products. But I was at a point where I went to sleep with 2 of the mint lozenges in my mouth and would wake up with them either paced on either side. But what I did was I replaced the adrenaline of this job and everything that comes with it with alcohol and other substances. But I have to be honest about this. I discovered prescription medication, and I could soothe that beast by pilfering the cabinet. And, if somebody had Vicodin or codeine, taking those for a momentary, and I did that for a long time, a momentary soothing. When I got to doing that, things began to go regular. And in my mind, I was not a whole person. I was still struggling with that anger. It didn't own me or control me, but that was by a razor thin margin. And that razor thin margin would have been losing the blessing that it was to be a firefighter and losing that identity. But the anger, I talk to my dad every day, the one that died, to the point now that I realize it was normal, but it wasn't normal. There are things that you could have done to unlock that and look at all of it and put it back in a healthy way, but I didn't, and I wasn't. And I never shared this with anybody. I'm well into my career now, the period that I'm kind of reflecting on. The best time in the fire service for me was 16 years as a captain and being a president of 522. But in that time, there were things that were happening. Well, I went with a church group to Mexico, and I split off from the group because I needed some Xanax to fly. You can get anything in Mexico, and legally or not. I went to a pharmacy without a prescription and got them to literally stand. I stood outside and waited for a doctor to drive by in his little tan Corolla, honks, does one of these, gets out. Yeah, I paid $125 for 500 Xanax. Took them back, used all of them. My wife had knee replacement surgery. The oxycodone was making her sick, so she couldn't take it. She had like 60 or 90 of them. I took them all in less than a month. And all this, I'm telling you, it was hidden. Some of you out there to listen to this, you knew me and interacted with me when that was going on. And all of these things were in my mind. And I would still have these moments of, I'd be better off not being here. I'm causing pain. But the funny part was, I wasn't really looking at it to be selfless and protect others. It was all about me. It'd be better if I wasn't here. It'd be better if I didn't wake up tomorrow. Those thoughts, had I not pursued serious counseling 7 years ago, would have progressed. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. I wanted you to have a history of who I am. Most people, they'll go, he's a liberal, he does this, he does that. Nobody knows who the fuck I am. They don't. I'm very private inside, and there is a pretty big screen up, and there's a handful of people that do. But I am genuine in my heart, and I bleed for our members. I care about every one of them deeply, and that is why I'm here. We go through this career like pinballs, just bouncing around everywhere, scoring points, getting in the hole, getting lost. But I guarantee you there are members on the job that are going to relate to this, and I couldn't go another day without bringing this up. And I've learned some stuff, and that's kind of, here's where I've been. I did the impulsive act, and I'm telling you, it was an impulse. If that shotgun had ammunition, I would not be here. It didn't, but I still acted on the impulse and able to sit here and say, I am telling you, suicide is not the answer. No matter what method, no matter what you're thinking about, it's not the answer. I got a gift from God, because usually these things have a finality that don't end well. There are many things that can put us there. It can be one issue. Mine didn't come from the fire department, the things I did on the job. It came from the baggage that is my life. And a lot of us have baggage that is our life. And it's in here. And it can grow controlling. I would, even as recently as a year, sometimes I've woken up when things are stressful. I just wish I wasn't here. And then I take a step back and, what are you doing? This is the challenge of living this thing called life. But we have to get ourselves in a position that we can recognize the journey that we're on. And I do think there are some times that a person may not have had thoughts of suicide, that it can be incredibly impulsive and it just overwhelms them in a moment, and it happens. But I also think that we live in here a lot. I sure do. And I can't be the only one. And when we start thinking about things, and if we're going down a bad road, my medication was alcohol. That is how I soothed myself. That is what opened the door to the thoughts of, I shouldn't be here. I would be better off. I should, and they all start with I. There's not one of them, not one damn one of them that goes, what will this do to my family? And this doesn't make the person like me having those thoughts bad. It means we have a moment that we're sick and we need help and we don't know where to go. And it's hard to go. It's hard to go anywhere, but we have to. And people could be like me, where you have a thought, it becomes more regular. You think about it with a little more depth. You think about it with a little bit more detail. I didn't make a plan, but I talked myself frequently and enough and included enough self-medication that I would have been an impulse suicide. I talked about it, I thought about it, and the people that are way more versed in this than me, they can pick this apart and say, you were this, you were that. I don't know what I was, but I know how I got to where I got to. And I recognized several months ago when I sat with Alex Hamilton, the power of having an impulse drive that turns to action. That's who I was. It had the thoughts, but it was an impulse. I know people and I've talked to people that have gotten to the plan. I didn't have a plan. Mine was about opportunity, and it was about the impulse. And I followed the impulse, and I am one of a very few that got out of it alive. And that's why I'm talking to you. We're all different. We all have a different path, and we all have a different plan. And through the course of this podcast, the suicide prevention number has been up. That's the first place you can go to break that impulse, to take a moment and break that thinking, because I strongly believe if you reach out and you seek that moment to tell somebody else that you can be assured is not going to harm you, is there to help you, is there to help you, and this is another Alex Hamilton, put down the weights of life and death for just a moment, and to find clear-headed thinking and to seek counseling and help, because this can be broken. It can be broken. We're coming into the holiday season. There is no more pressure on a firefighter or a firefighter paramedic's life, especially if things are turning in turmoil and the thoughts are dark and the mood is dark, than the holidays. Add to that, if you live in the Central Valley, it's foggy, the sun's not out, it's cold. All these things add to this moment. And that's why I feel that it's so important that I sit here and tell you this. My hope and prayer is that we never lose another firefighter to suicide, whether they're a California professional firefighter or anywhere in this nation. I've gone my whole career never wanting to tell this story and hiding it. There are a handful of people that know, but I've hidden from it because I was ashamed. And the actions, I still have that in here, but I've also come to understand them with counseling, with help, and to begin to unlock some of those things. If you're out there, you're not the only one. You are not the only one that is going through this right now, a month ago, into the future. And there's a way to put those bags down for a moment so that you can take a breath and feel relief in your soul and get help. If your issue developed just off of the fire service, that you put all these memories and these things, you're carrying them and you're about to break, the message is the same. Because what you're going through up here is no different than what I went through. It still manifests very, very much the same. Whether it's life's trauma, life struggle, pile on top of that the fire service and the things that are there, or it's just the fire service. If you're contemplating suicide, you're thinking about suicide, you've thought about a plan, you've made a plan, you're moving towards that decision, it's all the same. The finality of it ends in the same place. And that is, and you'll never be able to tell anybody, whether it's your wife, your mom and dad, your kids, your aunts, your uncles, your crew, you'll never be able to tell them, I just made a mistake. I wish I didn't do that. And I firmly believe that every member we've lost has had that feeling in that nanosecond of a moment. It all ends in the same place, potentially, but it can all end or begin to heal or begin to move away from with recognition and telling somebody that can stand in that gap for that moment to get you to a place where you can begin to make decisions that are based on life and not based on death. And so that's my message to all of the members of the California professional firefighters. If you're having those thoughts, call the Suicide Prevention Hotline, text me, go to a peer supporter at your department. We know how to deal with these things now. We know how to diffuse that moment and to get a person in front of help in a position that they can begin healing. I also know, and I'm going to tell all of you this, when you make the decision that this is not going to be the thing that's going to rule my life, or this is not going to be the last thing I do, acknowledge the work that's going to come with that. And this I can guarantee, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be without rocks and setbacks. But if you pursue getting away from having suicidal thoughts, suicidal tendencies, any of those things, if you pursue moving away from that, you will heal yourself from that. And I'll tell you, people's faith can play a tremendous role in that. I'm a believer, and I absolutely believe in that. There are a number of things. The one thing I would tell you is, and I was never this person, to find a counselor, and it's hard. Finding a counselor is like finding a diamond in a coal mine. You have to find the right one, the one that fits with you. They need to be culturally competent, or they at least need to be competent in all the aspects of your life that you're going through. But for you, you can't be afraid to find that person. So I'm going to end here. I appreciate you listening. Remember, if you're having these thoughts, even if it's just instantaneous, call the Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you're in the middle of this and you don't know where to turn, text me and I'll call you and we'll get set up in a place to get you on a path, because I can tell you this. If you're at that point and you're in that moment, you're in that impulse to enter into the act of suicide, listen to me. You don't see this right now, but I am telling you, you will know that you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Don't do it. Thank you.